It's just, so they will be able to see their lottery number before they even apply for housing. So around the same time, that's when the application does go live. And students have until February 1st of 2022 to actually complete their application and pay their deposit to be able to retain that guarantee for next year. So we do give you a little over a month to complete the application to make sure that everything is sorted out and submitted in time to retain that guarantee. So those are the two most prevalent things that you need to be worrying about: the deposit and the application in order to retain your guarantee. Selection doesn't actually begin until March. So the entire month of February, housing is, gathering our data. We'll be posting the winners for sweet bids at that time. And then the students will be picking their housing in March. And then April 15th is the deadline for students to cancel their housing application in order to get their deposit back. So if you are a student who doesn't actually obtain housing on campus and you decide to go off, you still have until that date to cancel and get your deposit back. You also have until that date to decide if you're studying abroad or doing an internship and you need to cancel your housing for next year. If you appropriately cancel your housing, we are able to sometimes retain your guarantee for you or even retain your deposit so that we have a spot for you on campus for the fall or the spring term. So I will be going into more in depth about lottery numbers and the sweet bid process. So these are just a broad overview of what the timeline looks like for an on-campus student. Okay, so I got my lottery number. Now what do I do? First things first, you want to make sure you pay that $325 deposit. That deposit secures your space. It also goes towards your spring 2023 academic bill. So that's not something that housing collects by any means. That just goes towards your tuition for spring of 2023. Second, you're going to want to complete your housing application. And then third, you're going to choose your adventure. So what makes sense for you? Are you going to want to complete an apartment style or suite or apartment style bid form? Are you thinking to apply to an LLC? Do you want to go through general room selection? Are you thinking about applying to be an RA? And also Greek life is also an option, depending on if you plan to pledge a fraternity or a sorority. Okay, so this page here is an overview of all of the buildings that are going to be an option for our upper class students. And the numbers beside the building names are the group sizes or room sizes that accommodate the groups of students. So for example, apartment style accommodations, we have Bouquet Gardens, Center Plaza, Forbes Craig, and Ruskin Hall. And in Bouquet Gardens, that accommodates group sizes of 3 or 4. Center Plaza, groups of 3, Forbes Craig, singles, groups of 2 or groups of 3, and Ruskin Hall, singles, groups of 2 or groups of 3. Our suite style accommodations that will be offered will be Irvis Hall, and those are groups of 4, Panther Hall, which is a triple or a group of 5, and then there's McCormick Hall, who has sizes 2, 3, 6, and 7. And then our general room accommodations. So these are technically rooms that are not considered suite style or apartment style. So there's no general like living space or maybe like a kitchenette. So we have Lothrop Hall, which accommodates singles and doubles, Irvis Hall that are doubles with private bathrooms, Panther Hall, doubles with private bathrooms, and then Tower C, which is all singles. And this information can also be found on our website. If you go to pc.pitt.edu and you click on housing, you can view all of our different building options for upper class students. Okay, so I think this is one of the most asked questions whenever I'm speaking to students. But, you know, what exactly is the suite and apartment style bid process? What does that mean? Is it complicated? Most students, they're, you know, they really want to live in a suite or an apartment as an upper class student because they like the idea of having that group of friends, or, you know, having that little bit of freedom to be a little farther from campus or something like that. So what I usually say is it's a pretty simple process. So ultimately you want to decide what your group size is. Let's say that I want to do a group of 4. So I chose my group size, that's 4. I'm going to designate one student as the group leader, and I usually say that should be the most responsible student in the group. They should be the group leader. That group leader is going to initiate the bid process. So they're going to go onto the application, they're going to start the bid, it's a button that they'll see, and then they will put in their group members' information and send them the invitations. All of the people in the group must be a guaranteed upper class student and must have a completed application. So the group leader sends the invitations to the members. The group members will accept the invitations, and at that point, the bid is complete. So as long as myself and my 3 friends, you know, do those first 4 steps, my bid is done. So then you can see steps 6 and 7, those are then in the hands of housing. So housing will then go through all of the bids submitted, and we will post our bid winners on February 15th. So your student will know if they want to bid by mid-February. And then step 8 is they will go on one of those 3 days to actually select their housing. So I will now go through how the lottery number and the points work with the bids. So, and all this information can be found on our website, but if you're a current first year student, you're a rising sophomore, and our rising sophomores are worth 2 points, and our rising juniors are worth 3 points, and we prioritize points over lottery number. So if I have a group of 4 juniors and with a lottery number of 5,000, and I have a group of 4 sophomores with a lottery number of 15, the group of 4 juniors will win first because they have more points. They have 12 points versus the 8 points that the sophomores have. So whenever housing is sorting through all of our bids, we sort them by group size. So we're putting all of the groups of 4 into one pool, and we're sorting those students by the best lottery number that the group has and the total amount of points that the group has collectively. And that's how we post our winners. So let's say that we are able to offer 150 4-person spaces. We will post 150 group leader names on February 15th. And next to the group leader's name, it'll have a selection date and time. So that is when that group leader is going to go on and select the housing for their group, and whatever is available for them at that time, that's what they have to select from. So if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. But overall, that's kind of how we rank our winners. And you can choose a group size from 1 up to 7. Okay, so let's say that your group wins a bid and they go on to select, but they actually don't like anything that's available to them to pick from, and they decide that they want to go through general room selection. You don't have to pick anything during suite and apartment style selection. You can go right into general room selection, or you can be a student who doesn't want to be in a suite and apartment at all, and you just go right into general room selection. So general room selection starts mid-March. So for rising juniors, it's March 16th and 17th. And your selection time is based off of your lottery number as a single person. And rising sophomores, it's going to be, it starts March 22nd. So the rooms that you will have to choose from during general room selection are any of the rooms that were not picked in suite and apartment style selection, but then plus all of those general rooms. So those singles and doubles in Lothrop, all of the doubles in Panther and Irvis, Tower C singles, and then anything that is in the apartments and suites that no one had picked from selection 2 weeks prior. So general room selection is a very popular time. And I will also say that we do tend to have students that forget to go on to select. So if you are one of those people that forget to go on to select your housing, you don't have to fret. That following week, we do open up selection one more time. We email students who never selected and say, this is your last chance to guarantee your spot. You have the guarantee, go on and pick your housing. And then after that point is kind of when we open it up to our non-guaranteed students to go on to pick housing. Other on-campus communities and opportunities. So regardless, if you do one of these 3 things, you still need to pay your deposit and complete your housing application, because all of these communities or opportunities reside on campus. So you have to sign that contract. So we do have upper class living learning communities available, and Amanda can take some time to chat about them. Greek life, we have sororities and fraternities that live on campus. So if you are going through the pledging process, maybe in January, you still need an active housing application, and you can still do, I'll come back to this though, or you can apply to be an RA. So that's also something that Amanda can touch on as well. But regardless, you will need an active housing application for next year to do any one of these 3 things. And if you decide that you want to do any of these 3 things, specifically Greek life or be an RA, and you're worried that, maybe you won't get into an organization, a Greek life organization, or maybe you won't get that RA position, you can still go through the bid process to maybe win a suite or an apartment style accommodation. And if you get that RA position, you will get pulled to your RA assignment, and then we allow your group that you were originally with to pick a new student to fill your space. That's the same thing with Greek life. If you end up joining a sorority and you have to live in Amos next year, we allow your group that may have selected a spot in Center Plaza to fill that space before we would fill it for them. So these are just some more opportunities that upper class students have. Some resources that are available, our housing services website that can be reached at pc.pitt.edu, and you just select housing. Selection Central will be updated in the next couple of weeks with all of our dates and deadlines, but for the most part, everything will mirror what I have in this presentation. It's just going to have more dates on the website for tours and things like that. Panther Central is also a really good web resource. They are open 24/7. Feel free to drop a ticket in with them, chat them, or give them a call. I did have a lot of success with our building tours that happened last week and this week. We had really good conversations with some students who are interested in staying on campus next year, but more will be coming in January if you missed past ones. And then we will be hosting more tabling sessions in January. So you can enjoy your winter break and come back and then start focusing on housing options for next year. Okay, so at this time, I am going to open it up to Q&A. But before I do that, I'm going to let Amanda chat about RA process and also living learning communities for upper class students.
Thanks, Jenna. I won't take too much time, as I'm sure I'm seeing lots of great questions in the chat and seeing Rachel and Amanda work hard to get those answered, but want to also answer some of those questions live. So briefly, I want to speak about 2 things, as Jenna mentioned, our living learning communities and our resident assistant application process. So first, and most importantly, our living learning communities are open to anyone. You do not need to currently be living in an LLC to apply for a living learning community for next year. So if you are currently, for example, not living in an LLC, but you're an engineering student and would like to live in our upper class engineering LLC, you'd be more than welcome to apply. If you are currently living in an LLC and would like to live in a different one for next year, so for example, if you're living in the Honors LLC and you'd like to live in an engineering LLC next year, that's certainly available. to you as well. The LLC application is embedded in the housing application, but is an application above and beyond the housing process. So if it is something that you are interested in, make sure that you're filling out that LLC application. And also then if you are interested in living with others in the LLC, also then fill out that LLC roommate request as well. Happy to answer questions, happy to drop some information in the chat about living learning communities, but certainly hope that you will consider that. If you're living in one now and loving it, would love to keep you. If you're not living in one now and jealous and want to try it out next year, you certainly can. I'll drop our website with our options, and I'm happy to answer questions about specific LLCs, but would also be remiss if I did not get a plug in for applying to be a resident assistant or community assistant. We are working hard to hire our staff for next year. So if you are interested in a leadership opportunity, and also all of the great benefits that come with being an RA or CA, I will also drop our website in there that talks more about our application process and the steps in that process coming up. But I do think it's important to share, as Jenna mentioned, if you're considering the RA position, please do still go through the housing selection process. If you are selected to be an RA, we will then just remove you from the assignment that you've gotten and put you into your RA space. So again, I'm going to drop these links in the chat, but happy to answer questions about LLCs, about being an RA, or any other questions you have about the residential experience from Residence Life's End.
Thanks, Amanda. So I'm reading through the chat here with some questions that I think would benefit the entire group. So I am gonna go through a couple here. Okay, so somebody had asked the difference between apartment style accommodation versus suite style. So technically apartment style is considered apartment style because it has a full kitchen. So those 4 communities that I had mentioned before, Bouquet Gardens, Center Plaza, Forbes Craig Apartments, and Ruskin Hall are all apartment styles. That means that you have a full kitchen in that apartment. You do not need to have a meal plan if you secure a space in one of those buildings. Suite style would mean that it is, I would say, like an elevated room within a residence hall. So Panther, specifically our 3-person suite, has a single room, a double room, a living area, a kitchenette, and a private bath. So it's an elevated residence hall space, but there is no full kitchen. So you are still required to have a meal plan living in a suite. But as an upper class student, you do have more flexibility in your meal plans. You can choose a plan that has more dining dollars versus meal swipes, things like that. The housing application has not gone live yet. We will email your students to let them know when it goes live. The conversations that I've been having so far have been, let your student enjoy the rest of the semester, focus on their finals. Housing will annoy them soon enough when it comes to the application going live. But for the most part right now, they should just be trying to educate themselves on the timeline and the different buildings that they have as an option for on-campus housing. I am gonna answer some questions about lottery numbers because it's a pretty popular topic. So if you are not a first-year student right now, if you are currently a first-year student right now, you will automatically be considered an upper class student next year. So an upper class student is defined as anybody that is not a first-year student. So that is a sophomore or a junior, and sometimes even a senior. Our guaranteed students will all get a lottery number. So those are students that are all within the same pool. So if we have 4,500 first-year students on campus right now that are guaranteed next year, all of them will get a lottery number. And if we have 3,000 sophomores living on campus right now that are guaranteed one more year, they will all get a lottery number. So our lottery numbers tend to span from 1 to about 7,500, 1 being the best lottery number, 7,500 being the worst number. But I always tell students not to fret whenever they see their lottery number, because they need to consider all of the students that decide to move off campus, and then all of the students that join other students groups whose numbers immediately become null because we are using the best lottery number of the group. So I can't really say what's a good lottery number versus a bad lottery number because every year it's different depending on how students leave and how students select and how students group each other. I always tell students that we have plenty of second year students living in apartment style accommodations. We have juniors living in suite style. We have juniors living in traditional residence halls. So it's all just depends on how our students select their housing and what their preferences are. So I can't say that someone is ever guaranteed to get a building or a space. But I always say that it does not hurt to try to go through the process because you have absolutely nothing to lose. Some other things I like to say is if you have the opportunity to be a guaranteed student and have a guaranteed space on campus for next year, to make sure that you pay your deposit and complete your application by February 1st, so you're able to retain that guarantee. Because if you're exploring all options by looking off campus and on campus, what we don't want to happen is for you to look off campus, your plans to fall through, and you come back to us after February 1st saying, I never completed my application or paid my deposit. Can I still have that guarantee? Because our answer to you is going to be no. But if you happen to pay your deposit, complete your application by February 1st, you never secure on-campus housing, you find something off campus, you still have until April 15th to get that deposit back. So it makes sense to at least try to go through our process to secure your space. Once the housing application goes live, that is when you'll be able to pay your deposit. We can only have one deposit portal open at a time. And right now, the spring 2022 deposit portal is open because we're still accepting applications for the current spring term. A question was asked, what happens if you don't want to bid? So if you have a group, maybe of 3 students, and you put in for a bid and you end up not winning a bid, you're automatically enrolled into general room selection. So we'll follow up with you with an email to say, hey, it looks like you didn't select your housing yet. Don't forget, you need to go on in March to select your housing through general room selection. And you can absolutely still go in through general room selection with intended roommate requests and even pull in roommates if we have spaces available for your group size. Guarantees are not designated by any number of credits. Guarantees are given through admissions based off of deposits paid of when you come in as an incoming first year. So if you paid your admissions deposit on time, completed your application through housing on time, paid your housing deposit, then you have a second year guarantee. So you don't technically have more pull if you have more credits. It's all based off of your years on campus. You can only submit one group or one suite and apartment style bid for one specific group size. So if we see that you attempted to put in more than one, we will reach out to you to say which one do you actually want to submit, because you can only submit one bid size. Let's see here. There is a question of, once you are in an apartment, do you get to keep it for subsequent years, or do you have to go through the bid process again? So we do have a retention process that I did not touch on here. That is, the information is on our website. So if you are a group of first year students and you win a bid for a 4-person group and you're able to, pick a spot in Irvis or Bouquet through selection, and you love that spot so much that you want to stay in it for a following year, 50% of your group needs to retain in that space, and then you have to fill those other 2 spots. So at least 2 people need to stay in that space, and then you have to pull in 2 guaranteed students to stay in the space for you, and then you are able to retain it for another year. Sorry, there are so many questions. Okay, so can a student apply individually for an apartment style housing, or do they need to apply as a group? We do have single apartment style accommodations, like a studio or a 1 bedroom, but we have so few of them on campus that they are more likely to end up in an apartment style accommodation if they go through with a group. So we have less than 10 of those kinds of apartment style accommodations available at this time. So if the priority of the student is to, maybe have their own bedroom within an apartment, and they don't mind having roommates, then they may be more likely to go through as a group of 3 or 4, because we do have more options with private bedrooms in those groups for apartment style accommodation. Rachel, Amanda, do you see any questions that you feel I should?
Could you maybe speak to housing for transfer students? We've had a few questions about that.
Absolutely. So if you are a transfer student coming into the university, or you're currently, if you're coming into the university next year, or even for the spring term, you're technically considered a non-guaranteed student for housing because you did not come into the university as a true first-year student. So you would be going through our non-guaranteed selection process, which happens in April. So you can still apply for housing whenever the application goes up and pay your deposit. And then we communicate to you when the selection portal opens up for our non-guaranteed students. And like I said, that happens in April. So depending on availability, we open selection, or we start individually calling our students to offer spaces depending on the order that they had applied.
Jenna, we've got a lot of questions about folks who are interested in going through the process without roommates, and how that would work for an individual seeking placement in a suite or apartment who is not in a group.
Okay, yeah. So if you are someone who is thinking about doing that, you are most likely to end up in a space, a suite or an apartment, through general room selection like that. If you're someone who doesn't have any roommates in mind right now, but is interested in having roommates for next year, you would go through general room selection, and you would be able to see the rooms available to you with, like if it's a 3-person suite or a double of some sort, you can see if somebody had already assigned themselves that space, and then you can assign yourself as their roommate. So if you're an individual that doesn't have a roommate right now or roommate in mind, you don't need to worry. You can still go through general room selection and assign yourself a space with a roommate. But general room selection happens in March. So if you end up meeting someone in the next 3 months that you wouldn't want to go through general room selection for, you still have plenty of time to create that roommate group to go through GRS with. So there's still plenty of time to potentially meet someone or come up with a game plan for finding a roommate or assigning yourself in the same building as someone that you might be friends with.
And I would also share too, if you are looking for roommates, there's lots of options, but certainly reach out to your resident assistant or resident director. They are having lots of programming opportunities, and also just connecting students who are looking for roommates in buildings. So reach out to your residence life staff, and they can help you get connected to other folks who are also searching for roommates.
Questions about guarantees. So you can always go back into your email inbox as a first-year student to see your correspondence that you would have gotten from Panther Central or Housing saying, welcome to Pitt. To make sure you get guaranteed housing, you have to complete your application. And if you secured your space for this year, you're already living on campus, 98% positive that you're going to be guaranteed for next year. But if you have a question about your guarantee for next year, you can always reach out to Panther Central for that. But you will know if you have a guarantee or not once we start emailing out the lottery numbers or the information to access the lottery numbers. If you get a lottery number, you're considered a guaranteed upper class student. 2-person doubles in Irvis do have their own bathroom. That was a question that I saw.
Jenna, can you talk about how the difference between sophomores and juniors are determined? Is it by credit hours or is it by years completed?
It's technically just years on campus. So if you have lived on campus 1 year, then you're going to be a sophomore in our system for housing next year. And then you have one more year after that. If you have lived on campus 2 years already, then you're technically going into your third year of guaranteed housing. So I know that there are programs out there like pharmacy that's 2+4 or 3+3. It has nothing to do with your credits or academic hours. It has everything to do with the years that you have lived on campus. Amanda, do you want to talk about if LLC locations will be announced before application deadlines?
So yes, so I mentioned in the chat, we are working to update our website. So I linked our website to in the chat, but made note that we are still working on some updates, and transparently, we are working to get finalized for our upper class LLCs. Please note that this is different than our information for our first year students. We do not advertise the locations of our first year buildings as those continue to change over the summer with our first year incoming class. So please make sure when you're clicking on the LLC website, you are clicking on the upper class LLC information tab, and that will be updated in the coming weeks.
Thank you very much. There was something that I wanted to say about that. LLCs, locations. That's going to bother me now. Oh, and if you do apply for an LLC, you do have the opportunity to also apply with roommates. So if you have friends that are all applying for maybe the Health Science LLC, you can all request to be roommates with each other within the LLC. And we try our best to make sure that you are living together if you are all accepted into the LLC.
Jenna, could you quickly touch on retention?
Yeah. So on our website, you are able to go on to see what buildings you are able to retain in versus not retain in. So if you are currently living in a building that is all first year students, like Tower A, Tower B, Holland Hall, Nordenberg, Sutherland, Residence and on Bigelow, those kinds of buildings, you are not able to retain in that space because those are anticipated to be first year buildings next year. However, if you are in a building like Panther and Irvis, Bouquet, Center Plaza, Ruskin Hall, even Lothrop and Tower C, you do have the opportunity to retain in those buildings. So like I said before, you just need 50% of the students in the space to be guaranteed and be willing to retain. And if you have any vacancies, depending on who's leaving, then you would have to fill those spaces with other guaranteed students. So if you're in a Tower C single, and there's only one of you living in the room, you do not need to find someone else to fill the space. Obviously, you just go in on retention day that you would get emailed about and go in and select your space to retain in. Panther double, only one of you would need to retain. You would need to find a roommate to fill the other side of the space, but you just go in on retention day and select that space again. And then, like I said, if you are maybe in a Ruskin 3-person, 50% of 3 is 1.5. We round up, so 2 of you would need to be retaining in that space, and then you would need to find 1 roommate to fill the 3rd spot to be able to retain that apartment. Okay, so I'm gonna elaborate on, somebody had asked, how can there be a space available for a single student in a suite or an apartment style accommodation during general room selection? if you have to have a full group size to actually secure that space. So you would actually be amazed by the amount of students that go through, maybe with a group of 3 or 4 or even a double during suite and apartment, and then maybe just some of those students decide to study abroad or go through an internship next year or get hired as an RA or get pulled in for Greek life or transfer schools. So we have vacancies that open. That's why there is a couple of weeks between suite and apartment style selection and general room selection, because that we give students enough time to like back out of those spaces. So that's how single spaces open up within those already secured spaces like suites and apartments. So if your group submits a request for an apartment and that's not available, can you still get a suite, or you automatically in for general room selection? So I think what's a little bit confusing is you're putting a bid in for a group size and a size of a space and not a specific building. So when I said before that, you know, maybe we have 154 person spaces to offer and 150 names go up on that winner list. If the first 115 groups pick Bouquet Gardens, all that may be available after that point is Irvis Hall. So Irvis would then be only available for you to select. So we put every 4-person group size space up for selection, and then depending on how students select, that's how selection rolls out. Let's see. If you have specific questions, like personal ones that would be beneficial to only you, we are going to be having a housing open house in Brackenridge Hall in the housing office on December 2nd. I believe it starts at 10 a.m. So we'll be information we post on our website, and we'll send out an email beforehand, but students can also drop by during the open house and ask specific questions. We also have a sign right on our office door that has the list of all of our housing team on our door with a QR code. You can always scan the code and schedule a time to meet with one of the housing team members to talk about options and things like that. Our office also includes my colleagues who oversee our university-owned leased apartments, and then our off-campus living specialist who is willing to look at leases from private landlords and places in Oakland and surrounding areas to give feedback on landlords and things like that. So our office is a resource center for our students, because we know that housing in Oakland and as a student can be pretty stressful or confusing, and we want to try to alleviate the process as much as possible. So please do not hesitate to feel free to reach out or stop by during our office hours, schedule an appointment, or stop by at one of our tabling sessions that is coming up. But for the most part, when I say that we bombard you with emails about applying and information, I'm not exaggerating. So we make sure to send that information to all of our guaranteed students, all of our technically non-guaranteed students, emergency contacts, and then you can also contact Panther Central for any information. As a group, do we think there's anything that I should touch on before we decide to end the call? I'm seeing some.
While Jenna gives one more scroll, here's my shameless plug. Once again, if you are interested in being an RA or interested in living in a living learning community, don't hesitate to check out studentaffairs.pitt.edu/reslife, where you can find all of that information, or shoot me an email if you've got questions.
And the one thing that I'm going to say is housing as an upper class student is completely different than an incoming first year student. As an incoming first year student, you list your preferences and housing assigns you a space. As an upper class student, you have the power in your hands to pick the space that you want. So as long as you apply and you pay your deposit, you are automatically enrolled to start to go in to select what kind of housing you're looking for next year. So if you never actually go in to select your space this spring, you will not have a space to live because we're not going to assign you a space. So make sure you're staying up to date on deadlines and checking your email and paying attention to our social media and asking your RA and asking Panther Central about things. It's a pretty seamless process if you pay attention. We just don't want you to miss something and then end up coming back to us and saying, oh no, I missed a deadline or something. So thank you again for attending. If you need anything, please reach out. But otherwise, have a safe and happy rest of the term, and good luck on finals. And if you need anything, please let us know.